And I just didn't want to ever like pop that bubble of innocence and tell them that the world is really dark and hard and disappointing. Junior. Hey guys, welcome back. Are you a middle school person or are you a high school person? That is the question that a lot of secondary teachers have to ask themselves as they're figuring out which jobs to apply for, and for our pre-service teachers who right now are trying to figure out what their student teaching assignments are going to be for the fall. And that is the subject of this week's video. Basically, I'm going to tell the story of how I decided between middle school and high school, and then I'm going to give some practical tips about things I think you should think about, considerations as you make this big decision for yourself. So let's go back to 1996. I am a newspaper reporter who is having an identity crisis, realizing that journalism is not for me and that I want to be in education. And so I had been volunteering a couple mornings a week at a middle school as a 7th grade writing coach, just to give back to the community. I've always been an early bird, but my newspaper shift didn't really start till about 11 o'clock in the morning, and then it would go to the evening. I just thought, I wanted to do something cool, and so I was volunteering with these 7th graders, and it very quickly ended up becoming my favorite part of the week, and that's when I realized I did not want to be Lois Lane or city editor of the New York Times. No, I wanted to be a teacher. And so that's when I began the several years process of going back to school, getting some of the classes that I need, taking some tests, which I've talked about earlier, and then go ahead and doing my student teaching. And when I got to the student teaching part, you have to decide whether you want to specialize in middle school or high school. In California, and in most states in the United States, a secondary credential means you can teach 6th grade to 12th grade, which is basically 11-year-olds to 18-year-olds. And if you know adolescence, there is a big difference between an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old. And so I had to figure it out, but I really genuinely, in my soul, did not know which placement was the best one for me. I loved those 7th graders that I had been volunteering with, but I also really liked the sort of snarky sass of teenagers. And so I was conflicted. Luckily, I was able to find in San Francisco Unified 2 schools that were right across the street from each other. There was Presidio Middle School and George Washington High School. And it was just a quick, 5-minute walk across the street. And I was able to find a placement with a 6th grade teacher where I could teach a class in the morning, then skedoodle across the street, and I taught an 11th grade American Lit class over at George Washington. And that ended up being the best thing I could have done because it gave me the experience of knowing what the 2 different levels were about. So before I get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to share this picture of my cute darlings. This was my class at Presidio Middle, and I usually don't show students' faces on my channel because of privacy, but these photos are 24 years old. These people are adults now, probably with families of their own, kids of their own, starting middle. Does that work out mathematically? I don't know. They're old now. They don't look like this anymore. But there's my darlings from my 6th grade class at Presidio, and then these are some of my juniors. I didn't get everybody. The photo got cut off from Carol Gibson's American Literature class. Fantastic kids. It was a really great experience. So 6th graders are adorable. They always want to play my games, have a good time. I can't really joke around with them though, because they don't really get my jokes. And if I drop a pop culture reference, they don't get it. 11th graders, not really interested in playing my games, but they also want to have a good time with learning, like all kids do. They do get my jokes. They reciprocate back. And not only do they get my pop culture references, but they teach me about new, upcoming pop culture references that keep me kind of young-ish. Young-ish. 6th graders are innocent in that sweet way. And I just didn't want to ever pop that bubble of innocence and tell them that the world is really dark and hard and disappointing. Juniors are kind of jaded because they already see that, but then they're also really optimistic. They actually want to make the world a better place. And so they have hope in their hearts. Even though they are jaded, they are still hopeful. The content between the 2 is starkly different. 6th graders, it's really basic skill builders, whereas juniors, it's refining. 6th grade, the literature to me was super boring. I think I had to teach Rikki Tikki Tavi during my 6th grade student teaching. That was the unit the teacher gave me. And it was not great. I didn't love that little mongoose. I mean, he was cool. The thing I remember is that Rikki Tikki Tavi always ate just half a banana so he could stay light on his feet, because he's got to battle the snake. Versus the Crucible was the unit I did with the juniors, and that's rich and applicable to today. And we could have lots of real world connections and deep conversations about it. And just intellectually, I thought, do I want to spend the next few decades reading about a mongoose or about, scapegoating in American culture? I have more to say about that one. Most sixth graders are still figuring out how the world works, and they don't even really know yet what they think about it. Whereas 11th graders, oh, they got opinions and they're gonna share them with you. Oh, they got something to say, and I can work with that. So my student teaching experience was an entire semester, but I would say within the first 3 or 4 weeks, I was pretty clear that high school was my path. And that just speaks to self-awareness, which is the next part I want to talk about. Not just my experience, but things that might help you as you're making this decision. Sit with your gut. Do you have a sense that you're leaning towards one over the other? I would really honor that because there's a reason that your gut is pulling you in that way. Another thing is to actually spend time with the age groups that you're thinking about working with. There's nothing better than actually working in the trenches, volunteering at a school or on a sports team or, with whatever community organization you have access to. Things are opening up now with COVID restrictions are easing as the vaccination rate is increasing, which is great. So those give you some opportunities to sort of have a sense of what you might be getting into and working with. And there's nothing that can replace that firsthand knowledge and those relationships and having that experience. Some practical considerations to think about. How would this teaching assignment fit into your life, your personal life? So I have had several friends who have, because of the Plinko board of job availability, have taken a middle school job to kind of get a foot in the door. And then as jobs became available, went up to the high school level, and that was a good fit for them. But there was one teacher, actually a vice principal I had, that she actually left the high school to go to the middle school. And she said that that was just a choice that was good for her family because in middle school, there was less testing pressure. There were a lot fewer extracurriculars that she had to monitor. And so she could spend more time with her family. They had just adopted a child. And so it was really important for her to give those hours back to her family. So you kind of have to figure that out. I would say, in terms of lifestyle, middle school is a little bit more family friendly than high school. But then I liked the high school stuff of being the yearbook advisor and going to chaperone dances and going to see the student play. Those are part of that vibrancy of a high school campus culture that I really enjoyed. So that was another reason why I wanted to go that direction. And I'm a never say never kind of gal, but I think I would never want to teach 8th grade. I chaperoned my daughter's 8th grade science field trip a few years ago, many years ago now, not a few, many years ago. And it was the longest day of my life. Being on a bus and then a train and then the science exploratorium and then a train and a bus home with, 75 13-year-olds was not my favorite experience in the world. But it's funny when I think back on it, 3 months later, when those exact same kids showed up at our high school campus and were in my 9th grade English class, I loved them. They were amazing, little points of light. So it's just funny how things can shift pretty dramatically depending on the environment that you have the kids in. And finally, don't get married to the idea that you're going to just teach one grade level and that's going to be your sweet spot, because things change all the time with scheduling. The master schedule determines the needs of the campus, and then administrators assign us to those jobs therein. So you can think that you're teaching your favorite 9th and 10th grade class, and then all of a sudden the week before school starts, you're teaching 12th grade British Lit. It happens. You also could get bumped campuses within a district. Let's say because of seniority and staffing needs, you could find yourself zoinked out of the job you were hired for and placed into 8th grade. No. So that's it. That's my 2 cents on navigating the middle school versus high school experience. It's been high school for me all the way. That is definitely where I belong. Where do you belong? Middle school people, why do you love it? High school people, why do you love it? What is your favorite grade level to teach? And then what is your least favorite? 8th grade teachers, how do you do it? How do you do it? All right, that's it for me, you guys. Be well. I hope you're doing great. Hang in there. We are almost to summer. I believe you can make it. I'll see you guys soon. Hey, click on a video. Watch something else. Have me chitter chatter with you on your evening walk tonight. You can play YouTube videos, just like podcasts, really. That's what I've started doing, and I like it. It makes washing the dishes a whole lot easier for me.